Hello, and welcome to the fifth and final in a series of short films about the women that are commemorated on the Dundee Women's Trail. Plaque number 21 is for Bella Keyzer, who was a welder, and this was during the Second World War when many women took up the work that men traditionally did, because obviously the men were away fighting. And although some women may well have wanted to continue doing that work after the war, in most cases that wasn't possible. And in Bella's case, it certainly wasn't. And she really wanted to continue being a welder. It was something she really enjoyed. She was a welder at Caird shipyard. And although she applied for jobs there, she kept getting knocked back, and sometimes she'd go for an interview. She'd get as far as an interview stage, and the interviewers, when she had turned up, would tell her, "You're a woman." And she would say, "I know," but it still didn't cut the ice, I'm afraid. However, when the Equal Opportunities Act was passed in 1975, she eventually realised her dream and became a welder. And in 1992, Dundee District Council, as it was then, gave her an award for promoting the equality, female equality. And Bella's plaque can be found, it's on a kind of lookout tower just down near the Apex Hotel. And the reason it's down there is because that's as close as we could get to the old Caledon shipyard. And Bella, because she's within living memory, not only are there newspaper articles and photographs that you can look at, but there's also a lovely little bit of footage on YouTube. So that's really worth checking out, because then you can actually see her and hear her, and it's just lovely. Plaque number 22 is for Ethel Moorhead. Ethel was the younger sister of Alice Moorhead, who also has a plaque. Her plaque is number 6, and you can hear about her in an earlier film. Ethel was an incredibly accomplished artist who studied in Paris and exhibited in prestigious galleries, and she had a studio in sort of King Street up to Victoria Road, that area, but it's now where the Ring Road is. So we've put her plaque on a building just up a bit from the St Andrew's Parish Church. In addition to being an incredible artist, in 1911 she joined the suffragette movement, and she was one of their most boisterous members. She, smashed windows, was involved in suspected arson attacks, things like that. But unfortunately, that also led to her being imprisoned. And on one occasion, when she was imprisoned, she was force-fed, and she was the first Scottish suffragette to be force-fed. And she wasn't very robust, and you can imagine that the psychological as well as the physical impact of that would have been heavy. So after that episode, she actually eventually went back to Paris, and there she established an arts magazine of international renown. Plaque number 23 is for Grissell Jaffray, who was allegedly a witch, and she was strangled and then burned at the stake for the horrid crime of witchcraft. There's not really much information to let us know what she really is supposed to have done. And she was actually, she was married to a burgess of the city. And so it seems, and we also think she was probably in her 60s. So it wasn't as if she was perhaps somebody who was, a countrywoman who maybe was seen as being a bit unusual. She'd obviously been perceived as a respectable person up to then. We don't know if there was some sort of political or religious persecution against her. And there is, of course, the legend that her son was at sea and that he happened to be coming back on his ship to Dundee and saw the smoke rising from the sea gate. And when he asked what was happening, he was told that it was his mother being burned as a witch, and he turned round and went away and never came back. Now, that sounds very unlikely, but it kind of makes a good story. Grissell Jaffray's plaque is in St Peter's Street. It's the little Vennel that is quite near Marks and Spencer's. And at the top of that little Vennel, there's a mosaic in the ground, and there's another one at the bottom. One has flames and one has water. And of course, it was ducking stool in the water and burned at the stake. When I first saw the mosaics, because there was no information about what they were about, I actually thought it was something to do with ice cream because they look kind of like cones. But I've obviously now know what they represent. So that's Grissell Jaffray, and not the nicest of stories. And you tend to think as well that people being accused of witchcraft is a really old thing. But in fact, the last person to be accused of witchcraft in Dundee, I think it was about 1942 or 44. And they were actually sentenced to 9 months in prison because they were acting as a sort of a spiritualist, as a medium, and they were announcing deaths of people who were actually eventually apparently dying in action. So that caused some security concerns. So not as far in the past as you might think. Plaque number 24 is for Janet Keiller, and most people who know anything about Dundee will know of its association with jam, jute and journalism, and Janet Keiller is the jam bit. There is a story that she and her husband ran a cake and sweetie shop, and there's a story that they received a consignment of bitter oranges, which normally they wouldn't have been able to use, but she decided to boil them down and made the first chip marmalade. And the rest is history. And I can remember actually going on holiday to France when I was, I don't know, maybe in my 20s, and being absolutely amazed that in a supermarket in France they had Keiller's marmalade. But actually, I was looking in my own cupboard, and lots of people will be the same as me. We have these old marmalade jars. And on this one, I was just reading it, and it says Grand Medal of Merit, Vienna, 1872. And then only prize medal for marmalade, London, 1862. So, internationally famous is Janet Keiller's wonderful marmalade. And her plaque is it's on the shop that used to be Greg's and is now Maisie and Mac. And the reason it's there is because that's where Janet Keiller's shop was. So it's just lovely that, something that happened all those years ago is still, Keiller's is still a household name today. I mean, what a claim to fame. Very deserving of a plaque. Plaque number 25 is for Emma Caird, or Marryat. And Emma was the daughter of a mega rich mill owner, and she had a very close relationship with her half brother James. And when they were younger, they travelled extensively. They went off to Berlin and Vienna and Moscow, St. Petersburg, and they also went to America and Japan. And then when Emma was in her 40s, she married a retired Lieutenant Colonel, Herbert Marryat, and then became obviously Emma Marryat. When her husband and her half brother died, and they died actually within 18 months of each other, she inherited from them. So her wealth went up again, and she actually donated lots of money to causes within Dundee, and she was known as Dundee's greatest benefactress. So you'll know of the Caird Hall, and she actually gave money to help with its completion, and the Marryat Hall is named after her. And if you go into the Caird Hall in the foyer, there is an absolutely beautiful portrait of her wearing the most magnificent hat. And her plaque, we've put it on where the Marryat Hall is, so you can see it if you're in the city square. You just go up and it's at the Marryat Hall side.